Last week we had all this hoo-ha about the Tucker Carlson occult interview with Conrad Flynn. We had quite an interesting programme there where we were looking at the discussion between Nick Land, my old school friend, and Dugin. So, Martin, we're going to have a little listen to Nick Land now, but you've got a few questions to ask me about Nick Land. This is you interviewing me for a change.
Okay. When and where did you get to know Nick Land?
Well, on the playing field at Langley Park School, which is just near Eden Park Station in Bromley officially, but the nearest sort of little shopping area, I suppose, is West Wickham. So that would be when I was about 14, 15 years old. And just really got to know him, got chatting with him. He was actually doing similar O-levels to me, and so I was in a couple of classes with him, and so we were sitting next to each other for years, doing maths, etc., physics, that sort of thing.
What was next to the school?
The Wellcome Trust. In fact, it was called Borough's Wellcome, which was this fascinatingly, if you look at the big scheme of things, they are transhumanists. They are a very interesting organisation, looking at adapting humans, changing humans, genetic, and even back in the 1970s when Nick and I were there, they were known as a place where there was loads of genetic engineering going on, of cows, of sheep. And in fact, you could see the tower of the old place where and funnily enough, Dr. Chris Busby was working there at the time. And that was where genetic engineering was going on. You could see a tower, which we always joked at school, was where the things that couldn't be incinerated in the incinerator over there were just flushed down the toilet. Bits and pieces of weird embryos and God knows what. So it was definitely a feature at the school, but it was also called Borough's Wellcome, so it was Borough's Computers as well as the Wellcome Trust, Martin.
Okay. Why did you become friends with Nick the Nazi, as we call him?
Well, that's a good question. Nazi Nick is how he was known at school. It was really because he was so amazingly knowledgeable. He seemed to know masses about history, and loads about psychology, loads about war. He was a fascinating guy. I just got the impression that he had turned up at Langley Park having had some other kind of education where he got an immense amount of knowledge. The fact that he was a Nazi was neither really here nor there. I was sceptical about that. Obviously, if you think about the 1970s, being a Nazi would be considered a bit of a joke, really. There was a bit of far-right stuff around. But anyway, so, yeah, and, I wanted friends. I was looking around for them. Nick was a very knowledgeable guy, and it was very difficult to resist any kind of qualms I'd have, because he knew everything. He knew more than any of the teachers in the school, I would say. More.
So it says here, you played war games at Nick's home. I presume this is the strategic. It's not the little soldiers. It's the. That's
right. There were board war games, mostly Avalon Hill SPI type games, all sorts, including things like diplomacy. In fact, Nick called it Diplomacy Club. So there's a bunch of us that used to turn up at Nick's place. This would be sort of 1977, every Saturday lunchtime, and come home about tea time, having spent the afternoon playing war games.
So you didn't just play on these, cardboard games with little counters. You also did something about the British Free Army on Hayes Common.
Well, that's right. Sometimes, rather than play a war game, Nick would take us out onto the common, and we would become a mercenary army. So we were training as doing a mercenary army. So the idea was we were given missions by Nick across the common. We would charge across. We'd meet each other at certain meeting points. It was really like a kind of military training course. Things like also trying to get from point A to point B in the dark without a torch. This was great fun. If you think about I was 15, 16 at the time. It was a great way to spend your Saturday afternoon or evening doing these sorts of like manoeuvres, basically. It was the sort of thing you'd get as part of a kind of guerrilla army training, and we loved it.
Yeah. And but at the same time, there were some drugs involved in all of this.
Well, yes. Of course, when you're at that age at school, there's always drugs. And in fact, there was a pub. There were several pubs which were Nick's sources for drugs. And LSD seemed to be the thing that everyone was interested in. And Nick became, was very much interested in it, and very much he was known at school as the guy that had the acid. I think he got it from, I'm trying to remember the name of the pub, the Saxon Tavern, I think it was, which was near Lee Green somewhere. But he seemed to know where to get this stuff. I mean, this is what I mean about Nick. He seemed to know everything.
So you went on holiday with him to Somerset?
Oh, that's right, yeah. At the end of our fifth form, which is we just finished all our A-levels, we came down to Somerset with Nick and I with a couple of other friends and spent a good week or so just sort of walking around the Somerset area. And we got off the train at Bath and walked down to Wells, and eventually, after camping in the woods in Wells for a couple of days and having various other walks around, we got the bus back to Bath and back home.
So, there's an incident that has come to our attention about Colette Dobson from
Colette,
the girls' school.
Well, we were at a boys' school, Langley Park Boys, and next door was Langley Park Girls' School. So, Colette Dobson, Nick was after her, and this would be, I suppose, we would be 16, 17. And this was his challenge, is he wanted to sort of get hold of Colette Dobson. Anyway, he was asking very much. He was over with the girls in the girls' school after this girl, and what she managed to do, I don't know anything about Colette, where she is now or anything like that, but it was a massive, it went all the way around the school. Nick disappeared at lunchtime one day, and he didn't come back to school. And it turned out Colette had stolen his clothes, including all of his underwear, etc., and managed to hide them and stash them somewhere. So Nick was stuck in the woods with nothing to wear by Colette. And this was one of those things that goes around school, I suppose. Anyway, I don't know how he managed to get some clothes together to get back home from this slightly embarrassing incident where he tried to get off with Colette Dobson.
Presumably nothing came of it.
Well, I don't think you can presume anything, really.
No, okay, we can't presume anything.
Anyway,
so what was Nick's attitude to God?
Well, I remember asking him after we stopped being friends, really. This is probably when I was 17. I grabbed him on the staircase at Langley Park in the sixth form block. I said, Nick, all these discussions we've all ever had, what about God? What do you make of it? Because I've got, I'm interested in what is his point of view. And he turned to me and he said, well, Tony, it's about 50-50, really. If does God exist? 50-50. So it's interesting to hear that from him as the person that he is now. That, maybe he does believe in God.
It says here, an encounter with God.
Well, yeah, that's right. Because of Nick, a lot of... Nick actually brought me to God in a weird way, in that he got me asking and thinking those questions as an 18-year-old. And so when I was 18 and just about to open my A-level results, I did pray. I said to God, if you're out there, please let me know that you're there, because I just didn't want to spend my life going through my life being someone that didn't actually got it wrong, So if God is there, it's quite important. If he's not, it's quite important. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life getting this decision wrong after as a young person, I've had a decent education. Why should I waste my life away getting that question wrong? So I prayed, and then a few months later, I found myself in a situation, Martin, where I knew there was a God. I had to pray I was basically about to die, and I prayed to God, and God revealed himself to me at that point, which is just a wonderful, weird thing to have happened after I'd met Nick.
So, when did you last see him?
Sussex University, 1980, probably, or 81, roughly. Went down to visit him there.
And when did you last speak to him?
When I was at the BBC still, I spoke to him from the BBC in Salisbury. And he was working then at Warwick University. Managed to just get through to him and have a little chit chat. But he sounded quite nervous when I said, I'm working for the BBC. It was I don't know why. But anyway, I got sacked not long after that. But anyway, I think Nick is part of a sort of international network. And as we're about to hear, and David Lewis, we're going to hear from David Livingston in a minute, he's sort of confessing really here to being a Satanist, but without actually confessing it. So let's have a listen to Nick in his reply to the Tucker Carlson interview, confessing to be with the punk Satanists.
The question of what is Satanism. And again, I think this is on a spectrum. And when I say spectrum, I'm not trying to say it's like a moral spectrum. I'm not trying to say there's there's kind of unproblematic bourgeois Satanism to a kind of spectrum extreme of like end of the world. I'm not going to say apocalyptic because that's precisely what I don't want to say, but let's just fill it in terms of just like promotion of various forms of just nakedly destructive, ruinous processes in service to one's Lord, the King of Hell. I'm not saying there's that spectrum. I think the spectrum is more between I'm sorry, I'm slightly losing myself here. What I'm trying to say is this: that there's a really interesting question of the relation or the role of the figure of Satan, Satanism, in the religious tradition generally, and I think intensified in the Protestant tradition. And, as I was saying to you guys earlier, like, I just heard a kind of talk by E. Michael Jones, who in his own way obviously is a problematic figure to various people, who said what I thought was a remarkable statement and very germane and timely of the moment, where he said, Satanism is the hidden grammar of Protestantism. And the thing is, I don't think that that's simply a stupid thing to say. I don't, in fact, think it's a stupid thing to say at all. It's an interesting thing to say. I mean, he was saying that all the founding fathers were steeped in the English Protestant literary tradition and its ultra-Protestant, ultra-literary tradition exemplified by John Milton, and that they, at some level, I mean, he didn't sort of go microscopic on this, on some level, they had found the rhetoric of Satan in Paradise Lost persuasive. And particularly the line they focused on, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, was, he took to be the epitome of this. And this led him then to the claim. And whatever you think of that, you can think it's wrong, you can disagree with it, you can obviously defend Protestantism, or you can denounce Protestantism, or, there's innumerable other positions, non-Christian positions you can take. But I don't think anyone can say that's not an important cultural claim to make.
So that's Nick Land speaking last week about this interview with Tucker Carlson. Martin, just in a nutshell here, because we're coming to a close now, but this whole idea of the sort of punk Satanists as against, and this phrase, better to reign in hell, so you're king if you're in hell, but if you're in heaven you have to serve. This is quite an interesting philosophical idea, and you could challenge the biblical account of the Garden of Eden, which is really a metaphor, I imagine, which is saying, well, you need to have people who've rebelled against God in order to and sinful people in order to understand what life's really about.
Well, some of the anarchists in the 19th century were very much of the view that neither God nor master. And, of course, that was the idea. We get rid of religious ideas and we'll get rid of hierarchy in society. That was a rather literary expostulation by your literary friend, but there we are.
So anyway, what do you make of that phrase from Paradise Lost? Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
It's a brilliant piece of poetry by the brilliant poet John Milton, which is still causing people to talk after all these years. but it doesn't necessarily mean what it literally says. It's poetry.
I think in heaven, are you really serving? I mean, actually...
Oh, right, so there's all these implications,
The whole idea, yeah, it is. It's fascinating. Anyway, this is the sort of question I like to see taken a little bit more seriously. But anyway, I spoke to David Livingstone about this all last week, this week, in fact, yesterday, where he talks about this whole idea of Nick Land and his priest kings.
It was interesting to listen to because that clearly seems to be what he's about, and that's definitely the circles where he exercises influence, like especially the accelerationist movement. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting to listen to his very convoluted attempt to try to hint that he was a Satanist without coming out and confessing it.
What do you make of this idea that maybe these two, but specifically Nick, are there to lead people who are interested up the garden path?
Because you look at throughout history of the sort of dual role of political leaders and mystics. Almost all the mystics have played a crucial role in politics, starting with John Dee, Baptist, St. T. Gallivant, Blavatsky, Crowley, and now people like Dugan and Land. And I don't really know how that works. I don't know if they're some kind of, but this is the interesting thing about synarchy, is that it's effectively the idea, and then it even goes back to Plato, right? Plato had a hierarchy, and at the top of the hierarchy, 3 levels, the top of the hierarchy are priest kings. And he even, I don't want to get this too overcomplicated, but this is one of the main points that I show in my book, The Dying God, is that to explain what it is that the priest kings believe, he provides the myth of our myth of the Arminius, I think is what it's called. The Armenian, effectively, is what it is, who does a descent to the underworld and describes the visions that he has there, which is basically proof of Plato's dependence on Kabbalah. So even in modern times, the idea of synarchy is the belief that at the very highest rungs of the society, you have priest kings who are in contact with the spirit world, receive their revelations, which they use to then pass off to the political leaders to implement and carry out. So this is why all these revelations are always so important, and this is the true perception from their angle of the Book of Revelation, is that it's information that has been delivered to them from the spirit world to guide their actions. So I do, with Dugan in particular being sort of the modern leader of the Siganikist tradition, that's, and a follower of Evola who have articulated that kind of idea. I believe maybe that's kind of how they see themselves. They don't need necessarily to pull the strings as much as to be the priests who do the interpreting and hand off the vision and advice to the string pullers.
Well, I talked when I was chatting with David. The longer version I'll put up on our show page at thisweek.org.uk, which is more like 40 minutes or something, much longer. But chatting about Dion Fortune, when she wrote about the occult, she was explaining how there's 2 main sides to it. You've got secret societies pulling strings within the system, in corporations, banks, etc., and within the criminal justice system, etc., etc. We're thinking about things like Freemasonry, etc. here. But then also the mystics, the people like Nick Land and others who at least attempt to show everybody what's going on. But of course they're working with the bad guys. So that's a little bit about Mr. Nick Land and his attempt to say he's a Satanist without actually saying it, apparently, according to David Livingstone. Finally, Patricia has a poem for us this week with Trump in the Knesset. It's called The Hubris Show. Knesset speech to sycophants, rambles, scrambles, sense was scant. A show of words, variety, clapping, slapping backs did see, off-topic laughs, gaffs on peace, up skirts and trousers smoke did reach, stern face with frowns through nose heard breath, Not one word on Gosling deaths. Ovations, many, clapping loud, praise to all, the casting crowd. Words of empty, senseless schmooze, like a grandpa drunk on booze. The Emperor, naked, to his toes, bleating on, no one knows. Just what he means, on what he said, deals on wheels, forget the dead. His backers, hackers want more blood, a pause for peace, 'tis understood. Digs at BB, laughs and jeers, a joker poker amid the cheers. Pardon begged for BB plea, a dig at Miriam did see. A joker, poker, dealer smug, as Trump on Israel pulled the rug. The Zionist hate syndicate for board of peace, the claps came late. Trump's rant on peace went off script. The threat of Zionists did quip. Auto cue or Freudian slip, either way, Zionists did kick. So thank you very much, Patricia, and that is all we've got time for this week. It's a war on God, but God's going to win. Time to sign off. Thanks very much to our guest. That is Tom Jones from Save Bristol Zoo campaign. Also, of course, to David Livingston, to John Wedger and Irish Republican Labour activist Martin Summers, and, of course, sound engineer Dave Bazanko. You can download this show from 11 o'clock or so to listen in the car or anywhere you like. Just follow Tony Gosling Censored on Telegram. My paperbacks about Churchill and the Nazis at the end of World War II, The Traitors of Arnhem, Martin Bormann and the Bilderbergers. That's 15 quid for an actual paper version, as well as the Secret Government anthology From Cromwell to the Princess Diana Assassination, The Siege of Heaven Reader. This show's repeated at 11 p.m. on Fridays and at 11 and 5 a.m. and p.m. all week on the talkradio.org.uk stream. Do please feel free to make live recordings. We've been streaming from Bristol on the talkradio.org.uk stream, at DJ Plug Radio in Nuneaton, Warwickshire, on Holy Land Radio in Wisconsin, and live on the Not the BCFM Politics Show app. If you can restream us live or rebroadcast, just let me know and I'll credit you. Have a relaxing and enjoyable weekend. Do please join us for Not the BCFM Politics Show next Friday at 5. God bless. Do a good deed every day and don't let the synagogue of satanic rabbits get you down.